Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast, a production from Empowering Pumps and Equipment as the voice of the pump and related equipment industry. Hey, Rob. Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Charli. How's everything on your end?
We're doing great. Well, I've really loved having all this technology where we record stories. I don't know about you. I mean, you do this every day too, so we can get into that. But first, let's start with telling people who you are because they may not have heard your previous episode. So, just what's your story, Rob?
Yeah, so I'm Rob Kalwarowsky. I suppose I do a lot of things right now. I'm a podcast host. I'm a mental health advocate, and I guess now I'm a leadership coach as well. And I also work as an engineer. So I do a lot of different things, and it just depends where you get me, which hat I'm wearing.
That's right. Well, he was my leadership coach too. So for everybody, he has helped me really I was trying to think about this before the call and what I've learned about leadership. And I think in the realm of emotional intelligence for me was the biggest like change and thing that I've learned since we spoke. I mean, I remember you just mentioning mental health and on our first podcast together. And I was like, I need to know more about this because this is the first person in our space that has talked about this. And I think it's so important. So, leadership, mental health, engineering, I mean, it all falls into place. So, I am curious a little bit about what you do on the engineering side because I haven't really stepped into that world with you a little bit. So, what is that like on a day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the last 10 years I've worked in heavy industry. I started out my career in mining as a reliability engineer. And since then, I worked 5 years in consulting, basically across, everything mining, manufacturing, oil and gas, chemical plants, pulp mills, power plants, basically the whack there. And then around the last 2 years, I've worked in pipelines doing asset management. But it's basically all similar. Like we're really looking at how to better the equipment, how to get more value out of the equipment, and how to optimize basically the life cycle of these equipment. So it just depends what equipment it was, but it's all roughly the same work.
Yeah, and it's funny because you are also doing that as we're talking about assets. We include people in assets, and so now you swapped a little bit. I guess not swapped because you're doing it, but enhanced this into really helping people and developing people, and helping them be their best self. So making that efficient use of humans out there. I don't know. Uh,
But
what
I'll
is it
tell you
like?
I'll tell
Yeah.
you why, Charli. And it's kind of a realization that I had probably about a year ago. And really where it came from was what I've seen throughout my career and like what I've experienced through my career. So I worked in mining for a year. I saved them $30 million doing all new stuff. And I walked into the annual review and I was like, hey, it's time for promotion. It's time for like recognition, the whole bit. And basically, what I got was this fixed mindset. We've always done it this other way. Your way can't work. You don't fit in here. You don't belong here. And they didn't explicitly say those things, but it was like that's how it landed in my experience. And then it sent me down the rabbit hole of depression and all these other things like the mental health side. But I started like after working there 2.5 years, I started doing consulting and I figured like, hey, maybe it was just this one company, this one, department in this company that was the problem. But I saw it across the like 50 different facilities I went to across North America. And it wasn't industry specific. It was literally everything. And I would go to these sites and I would see people who were the frontline people, the mechanics, the operators, the millwrights. And I would say that they generally knew the problems that were happening at their site. They generally knew the answer on how to fix those problems. And yet they're hiring an external consultant to basically take all that information and tell it to their manager because they felt like they were unheard. They felt like they couldn't speak the truth without like some sort of punishment, whether that's like you're not getting the next promotion, you're getting fired, or you're getting yelled at, whatever these things were. And then the next, like the last piece was I had this podcast, which it's now called Maintenance Disrupted, and I did about 130 episodes with that show. And I always ask this question at the end of the interview around what are we not getting right? And so I'd have people on who wrote books. They're world class experts on, RCM, RCA, all these predictive maintenance tools. And I used to ask them that question and say, like, hey, you wrote a book on RCM. Like, what are we not getting right in the field? And inevitably, the answer was implementation and culture change. And so, like when I started down this leadership journey with Susan, I started learning that, about these elements of like psychological safety. And it all clicked. It was like, hey, well, this is why people on the shop floor can't tell their manager that something's going wrong. And then
Yeah, and
this
I'm
element, yeah.
interested on this. I'm interested in this part because when you're talking about that and kind of you going in as this third party, did you see that they would accept the information from you, like, and try to like? Was there any change within that organization once a third party came in, or was it? It was just it wasn't going to change in general.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think much changed. I think generally what would happen is I would deliver a report, I would deliver a presentation, I would walk away, and nothing would change. And I think that we see that so much in our industry and I mean, like RCM's been around 50 years, we still don't have results. So it's like, what's going wrong here? It's not the process. It's the people aspect. It's the leadership aspect.
Mhm. Yeah, and you talked a little bit about it. It's the people within the company that knows the answer, that absolutely understands exactly what needs to happen, yet for some reason they either don't feel like they can say it or they have said it and nothing happened or something negative happened. And so we're teaching people how to be better leaders. That's one aspect of it. So we identify, okay, this is the problem. Now we believe that we can make a change and we can go in with the tools and present this. The other is let's talk about it. Let's talk about the company's culture and what we're trying to accomplish and what that means. And you've done that a little bit too, right? Going into organizations and talking with maybe the senior leadership on topics. Is it working? Is that what? I guess I know it's worked for me, and I'll tell you why I know that. Because my team actually said, I see changes in you for the good. And I want part of that. Right. So they've asked to join and be part of the leadership launchpad. Right. And so is within our industry, is this what you see can really make the difference in our work or in our workplace is just everyone kind of understanding what leadership is and their role in it?
I think that's an element. I think the other element is like this piece of belief, right? And I think we hammered this last podcast that we did, but it's like you have to believe and you have to choose that you want to be a leader. And so like it's not this element of I must be the CEO or I must be the plant GM or the maintenance manager. I must have direct reports. Like this is not the only thing that makes people a leader. And to be honest, I've been at a lot of facilities where I would say the biggest leader is probably like one of the mechanics, not the site GM, right? And I think like that's another element is I get this question a lot, especially when I'm trying to get people into the leadership program is I'm an individual consultant or I am an individual contributor. Why do I need leadership? And it's like, well, I mean, look at Dylan Day, right? I mean, Dylan, he came into the program. He's a millwright. He doesn't have any direct reports, and like, look at where he is now. Like, he's come on. He went on Maintenance Disrupted. He did a bunch of panels with Upkeep. He did a podcast. He's launching a program to better millwrights across the world, and like he's well on his way to getting some new positions that are like where he actually wants to work versus where he's working right now. Not like in terms of the role, not in terms of the company. And so I think it's like, it's this program is not just about like people supervising others. It's like it's a catalyst for change, and you just need to harness that catalyst.
Yeah. So if there's something that you see that needs to change, you do have that power to do that. You just have to believe that you can do it, and set out, do the things that you need to do. Not necessarily like fix ourselves, because I mean, I say that because there's a lot of studies about that. Like, okay, if I can just be better in all these areas, then I'll perform. It's not that. Exactly. Right. What I learned in the Leadership Launchpad is a lot of the things that we're trying to accomplish, we're standing in our own way. So that's the piece that I think is significant, is that asking permission for me, right? Seeking approvals and things like that. Once we get past that, and a lot of that to me does affect our mental health and our ability to perform, and lead in different positions, because we get in our head and we talk ourselves out of the things that really need to be done. So you have a different perspective on leadership and mental health because you've been going through it and studying it. But do you find that they're really tied together like that?
I mean, for me, they're absolutely tied together. For me, what the biggest gap and the reason I went down this route of leadership is I feel like a lot of us, we go to work and we sort of punch the clock. And I see this across industry, right? And it's like we're disengaged. And all of that's a leadership issue. Like Gallup reports that 70% of engagement is your direct manager. So it's not even just like the guy at the top of the organization, it's literally the person you report to. And so if you can make a dent in those people, then you're impacting the people and how they feel on a day-to-day basis. And like let's use Garrett as an example. Like Garrett Earl was part of our course, and he
Hey,
was
Garrett.
yeah, shout out to Garrett. Like he was part of like he got promoted in his organization, and he had like he's supervising some planners, some mechanics, and like some other people, reliability people. And he was telling us about this story where he had a guy who worked at his site, and this is so common. Like the mechanic is 20 to 25 years in the same company and was just disengaged, was checked out, just thought that no change would matter, nothing that he said would matter. He could say, "Hey, do this," and no one would listen. And like every site I've ever been to, there's at least one or two guys like exactly like that. And by the end of the work that Garrett was doing, he was able to get this guy to a point where the guy was like, "Hey, I'm learning something new every day and I'm engaging back into the work." And that for me is like it's a massive impact on that guy's mental health. Because if you go to a place that you hate and you just mail it in, and you've been mailing it in for 20 years and you mail it in for another 40 until you're 65, like it is literally soul sucking. And it's like a huge number of people do that. Like 15% of the world is engaged in their role. Like think about that. Like something's wrong.
Yeah, and it's not just, this is the reason why we do it, right? To help people in their lives and to be better. But just imagine that company with its staff just barely performing, I'll say. Like just showing up and like, okay, tell me what to do. I mean, it's just got to be better than that. And you have to know about it. And I think that that's the piece where if they don't tell you and you can't see the problem yourself, you're not close enough to it, then you're just running and trying to perform at your company without all the information. And I think all leaders should want to be able to know what would make their company better. And I say leaders, all organizations should want to know how it could be better, how it could run more efficiently and be just a better system altogether. And that has to be from the people.
And that's the element of psychological safety, right? And I think like people think that psychological safety is about being nice to each other. And it's not. It's about having real conversations about what's truly happening. And that can be a disagreement, that can be an argument, that can be other things, but it's just that you can voice your opinion and voice what you think, and you're not worried about getting fired because you said, "Hey, this pump is broken. Like, we need to go and fix it." Right?
Mhm.
And I think that's the other element there is like I talk about psychological safety as like you as the manager, you're driving the car, but you have a blindfold on.
Mhm.
And the passenger in the seat is your team, is your employee. And if you don't have psychological safety, they're just going to tell you that the road is straight and smooth and you're going to hit the gas and eventually you're going to be in the ditch because they're not going to tell you, hey, it's turning or hey, there's a bump there. Right. And I think that that's the element that I want people to really think about is, do you even know what's happening on the front lines of your business? It doesn't have to be a plant. This could be a grocery store. It could be a bank. It could be like a digital programming company. Like, what is actually happening at the people who are doing the work on a day-to-day basis? Like, I would challenge you, you might not know.
Yeah, and it sounds like we don't know. Just as uh, the world, it's 15% is definitely not enough to know anything. But okay, so what are we doing to fix this? I mean, I know there's some tips out there on how to open the door for people. Can you give us a little bit of insight on what people can do to, the, open the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, opening the conversation, like the way to do that is using vulnerability. Now, this doesn't mean you got to come on and talk about your deepest, darkest secrets. Clive Lloyd uses this one about self disclosure, about telling your life story, not just like listing your resume, but like telling your story, like who makes you you. Right. And it's a very effective tool because it really opens the floor for people to basically share their own story and then you can connect. And I think that's the biggest thing is and this is what we teach as like leaders is the people are the answer, and relationships and connection and trust need to be built before you can get to these elements of high performance. And vulnerability isn't just about creating, and like psychological safety, these are not about creating mental health safe workplaces or these types of things, although you will, but it's actually like the highest performing teams in the world, like Google, Aristotle did the work, and it's like these are how you make teams that win. These are how you make teams that succeed. And if you want to succeed, this is the way to go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that that trust factor is so important. And, I used to just get so uncomfortable with people who wouldn't tell me something personal about them. I'm not as bad now, but like in order for me to like go all in with you, like you have to tell me something about yourself. It's almost like, okay, now it's safe for me to tell you something about me. And, I just noticed that about myself. And you're like, okay, some people are more reserved and they're like, okay, personal's here, business is here. But that doesn't work necessarily in building trust. There has to be some element that you give to others in order to open up. And the other thing that I learned just from the group, having that team and peer to peer conversation, is that you may not realize something is happening to you in a certain way until you see it happening for somebody else. And that's when, like you said it, right? You said, okay, I thought this was just the company I was in. And then I saw, it said all these different companies. But, my problem was, I felt isolated, that I didn't belong. And then okay, well, this is happening for more women in our industry. Okay, well, this is a problem that we need to solve. But before that, before you hear somebody else's side of things, you may be missing it completely. You may, just be maybe too focused on your problem or what you're trying to solve individually. And that common mission, a common belief for everybody. If you can get a company on a common mission like that, that's where the magic happens, right?
100%. And that's one of the things that like I'm taking a psychological safety certification, and I was in the group yesterday, and I just felt that resonance. And like, these are like, I was the only person in the room that was not working full time as an executive leadership coach. Right. And so, but it's like, and yet each person in that room, they're trying to drive change in their customers. They're trying to create environments where people feel safe to come to work and they feel included and they feel like they can speak up and all these things. And it was like, it was just so empowering, and so that just you feel connection that you didn't. And I would have never met these people. None of them worked in heavy industry, right? Like, these are people who are, generally, even their customers are more like, digital people or whatever. And I
Just
think that
people.
that's, yeah, and I think that that's the piece that we had in our locker room in the fall, right? It's like, we had people from a few different industries. The locations went from like Edmonton to Tuscaloosa to Louisiana, right? And it's like, it's just, you can get that resonance and the connections that you build, and like, we're all there to support each other. And I think like like a lot of the wins in the group happened between you and other participants, or the other participants between themselves. And I think that that's an element that we don't necessarily get at work, especially if we're in a cutthroat environment or we feel like we're not able to open up. It's like, we lose the ability to support each other in these just raw ways.
Yeah, that's 100%. And I think that's what we're talking about. It's funny. It makes me think of what Becca told me today. I was trying to, talk through how I'm a leader in the maintenance community. It's like, that imposter syndrome sinks in there. I'm like, what can I lead? What can I teach these people? I'm not really doing maintenance. And it's about leading is universal. It goes, across industry, across, everything. I don't have to know how to turn the wrench exactly in order to tell you that you need to, talk to each other and actually communicate that there's a problem, right? So there's just so much there that I think is important to share on connection, and it definitely can help people with that, right? We love connecting around here.
I mean, people are people, right? And I think that that's the biggest thing. It doesn't matter what industry or company. Like honestly, like, if someone dropped me into, I don't know, some
Any industry, yeah.
some computer programming company, like, I'm sure I could make an impact if, like, on these people. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is like, we get so ingrained in just, and I saw this even in mining. Like, literally, we had two mines that were next to each other, and the pits literally touched at the back, and we would share. There would literally be trucks that would drive from one side to the other, and it was the same. Like, obviously, it was the same truck, right? It would cross this imaginary boundary, and people were saying like, well, it's different here than it is there. And it's like, no, literally, the ore is the same, the mountain's the same, the equipment's the same, like, everything's the same. It's not different. And I think once you start connecting with people who are outside your core little circle, you'll start to see that a lot of this stuff is the same across everywhere. And you can add value basically wherever you want.
That was Carly. She just got home from the bus. I realized that I didn't schedule this where there was a good break, but um, we can talk about that, right? We're real. We have family, and there's always something. I put the dog out though. I haven't heard your dog, so it must be somewhere.
He's sleeping now, but he may
Okay,
wake
he's
up.
being a good boy. That's right. Well, okay, I do want to talk about the podcast because I think that we cover all of this, and um, with the leadership launchpad and talking leadership, and then also dismantling the high performance narrative. I think that that is key with what we're with you. Okay, you're a high performer. You are an athlete, and that has a different play on the mind of mental health because we're still performing. We're still going to go and try to be our best, and health aside, right? We're full speed ahead. and that's what kind of gets us into trouble. So I've really enjoyed these conversations, and listening to this kind of different group of people with this athletic. And that's not all the people you have on, but the athletes that you've had on really kind of took me back to playing basketball. And, I wanted to play whether I had breath or not, right? Put me in, coach. And so that's how I feel today, right? Is, some of that is learning how to manage that. And that has helped me in leadership. So tell us about your podcast. What have you seen, there, and what's next?
Yeah, I mean, from a mental health perspective, I think it's so common, right? And it's like I suffer with depression and anxiety and like PTSD on a daily basis, and yet like I work full time, I consult part time, I'm doing this leadership program, and I do 2 podcasts, right? And it still doesn't feel like enough. And I think that's the element, right? Is like we naturally, well, I mean, maybe not, it's not natural, but we've been taught to push to the max at all times. And I like literally had this conversation with my therapist a few weeks ago, and she said to me, she's like, Rob, you need to take a break, because if you don't, like, you're going to hit rock bottom, and like you need to change. And I think like that's something that we're trying to drive at with that podcast, right? It's like you can be a high performer in business, you can be a high performer in sports, you can be a high performer in academics. It doesn't really matter what field, but you can strive and still struggle. And I think that that's the element. Like yesterday, I had a call with a founder of a digital company who's looking to connect people with psychedelic medicine, because literally it saved her life. And we're going to
Wow.
have her on the show in the next couple weeks. And it's like, it's an incredible conversation to have, because I mean, my experience with common medication that we get now, like I've been on 15 different types and they've all made me worse. So
Yeah.
finding these people who are doing incredible things and like having these conversations, like they are not maintenance people.
Right. Well, but it opens your mind to things of like, you take in little pieces of all these conversations and applying it to your life and saying, okay, how does this fit into me, and what I was feeling, or what could help me, um, you know, with me and my health. There's an actual issue where 30%, I'm running on like 30% less oxygen than most people. Like, so I should slow down, but I don't want to, right? And so anyway, that's what Vince said. He says, imagine what you would do. We're like, I don't know what else you would do if you had running full capacity. But I think that's it. It's understanding that striving and go really doesn't help you accomplish these things, because it can slow down and stop and still accomplish things with focus and the things that are important versus the hustle, um, versus our mind just going nuts saying, this is not going to work, or I'm not good enough, I can't present this idea. All those things take energy, and if we can push those negative thoughts aside, then we can do a lot more. So I do see those as really hand in hand with the leadership, and the leadership Launchpad you're doing. So when
And it
is that
is,
next
right?
one?
Like it's
Yeah.
a touch bit about personal leadership, and like a lot what you're mentioning there is a fair amount of mindset. Now, let's just be clear here. This program does not address mental health issues. If you have significant mental health issues, you should go to therapy or find a therapist or a doctor, like these types of things. But definitely like these underlying thoughts about like, I'm not good enough, I don't belong in this room, I can't speak up at work because I don't feel qualified, imposter syndrome, like these types of things,
Mhm.
or even like on a daily basis, the decisions you make, these are mindset things that we can help you with, right? Like a great example is like, like let's say you want to lose weight and you're like deciding whether you're going to go for a bike ride or you're going to lay on the couch, right? Like the short-term gain would say, hey, just lay on the couch, like eat chips, like don't worry about it. But if you use some of the tools that we can give you, you're going to look at like, it's going to help you flip the switch and really think more long term and think about your health and like the benefits about making an empowered choice towards your goal. And you'll really feel good about going for that bike ride versus laying on the couch. And I think these are the small things that you can do every day that will get you where you want to be, not today and probably not tomorrow, but maybe in, like in a few months or in a year.
Yeah, I agree with that. It does. It really gave me the tools to look at what I was doing and what I wanted to be doing and what aligned with my values. And if we can line all those things up, you imagine, like, I mean, here's a bunch of time left. Here, let me give this to you. All this time you spent, in the roller coaster ride. Here, now go accomplish something great because you're not, in that. So I just hope people will, join you and, follow you follow you on all your different networks. And you are really connecting with some interesting and awesome people. And, you've been doing that for a long time now, that storytelling aspect, like learning from other people's stories. How has that helped you, just hearing other stories?
I mean, it's a reason why I tell everyone who asks me to start a podcast. Um, I've said this for a while, right? Is like I hosted the maintenance podcast for. I mean, it's almost 3 years old now, and I don't like reading maintenance books. I don't like. I think they're awful. I think they're dry. No offense to any of the people who actually
Right.
wrote them, but I would much rather like have the person on and have a conversation and ask them the questions that I want to that I want answered.
Mhm.
And I think that that's huge. And then I think with these new podcasts, it's very much about like, one, it gives you an excuse to reach out to literally anybody you want to talk to. And then the other side of it is like, you get to connect with these people on a deep level. Like literally, I was on the call with that CEO I was talking about earlier. Like we talked for 20 minutes and we talked about like suicide, psychedelics. Like the
Mhm.
connection in 20 minutes was unbelievable. And it's like you can never get that in a book. Like if she wrote a book and I read it, I would have never had that resonance with her. And I
Yeah.
think that's the key piece for me is like, one, it's learning. Absolutely, you can learn great things. Two is you can kind of, as a host, at least, you can direct the conversation as you see fit. So you want to dig in some certain area, dig in. Like that's how you can do it. And then the third thing is just like the connections you can make. Like you can have conversations with people you see in who've written books, who you see on like on all these webinars. You can have a conversation with Charli, like you can
That's
get
right.
out there
That's
and make
right.
it happen.
Well, that's what I did. I remember having a conversation with you. I had been told about your podcast for, I'm going to go with like a year. It might have been a shorter period of time, but it felt like a long time. And then finally get you on there. And that's the thing. It was not a question that I asked you because I didn't know to ask you that question until you were in the conversation. So getting in there and like listening and picking up on what's important to them, which is one of my favorite things. I know I talk a lot, and so people are like, how is she listening? Because she's talking, but you read through body language and, even things that I say that you grin at, right? Like it's a key or it says, okay, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to ask about that later. And that's what's fun to me about podcasting is really connecting and, also, being part of that group with y'all and being part of a team is what it felt like. I mean, we even referenced it as a team. Okay, these are people part of my team that are going to help me get through this to this next level. And we have the resources to do that. And I think that that's another key element is that, a podcast gives you a voice, which is excellent. And you're able to kind of amplify their voice for change. But then just the connections that we both have personally. And you do a better job of this than I do, where you actually make personal connections through like a message, a LinkedIn message or something where you're like, okay, I'm going to connect these two people. That's huge. I mean, just that in itself, people pay for that. There's a whole business about that, I'm sure. But
They
for
don't
you,
pay me
it's
for
just, yeah, I know they
that.
don't exactly. But there's something about that. It means that you care and you're thinking about that all the time. And I was introduced to this word. It'll come up on a later podcast, but the super connector. And Sam Gupta is coming up on our podcast, but he told me about this, and I'm like, yes. And I'm talking to you. I'm already thinking about, like, I need to follow up with Dylan and Garrett and like be like, hey, what's up, guys? But that's the thing. You got to keep the conversations in mind with when you have other conversations to really help people and develop them.
And that is your superpower, Charli. Like, you are a connector, you're a community builder, you're someone who puts other people forward. And that is like you said, you joke about
Fun.
talking too much, right? And it's like you are listening and you are building connection. And like this is what you are an expert in. And I think like that's what makes you such a strong leader is a lot of people like, I mean, I've had a lot of managers that want to have real conversations with me, and it's like literally talking to a wall. Like you make no connection. They're not giving you an inch. And I think like that's one of the biggest gaps that I see out there.
Yeah, I'm just imagining the presentation that's being given to you, right? That there's just, okay, this is what I came here to say. I'm done. Like, no, like you said something to me during that meeting, but I didn't hear you because I was delivering what I had to say. It's kind of like, yeah. And then they just keep going. So I was seeing that happen as you were talking. Okay. Well, there's so much here, Rob. I love being able to bring you on my podcast. It's super fun. Thank you for all of the promotion, including me and your promotions. That's kind of fun for me. I love that. And I love seeing the team being out there and just, I can't wait to see who is going to join you this time and what that group is going to look like. And like I said, I think lives are changing right now and I'm really excited about it. So, what about the program? We haven't really talked about it, but you can sign up for Leadership Launchpad right now. So when is that? And tell us more about it.
Yeah, so it's a 12-week online program. Basically, if you're anywhere in the world, you can sign up for it. It comes with like there'll be videos each week. There'll be videos, there'll be exercises that you can do. There'll be a group coaching session each week, and then you'll get, I think it's 3 or 4 sessions one-on-one with either Lauren or me. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Lauren. Some people may not know her. So Lauren Williams, she's the co-host of Dismantling the High Performance Narrative with me, but she's also a high performance coach. She played hockey her whole life. She was trying out for Team Canada. She went to University of Wisconsin and won a national title in the NCAA. She was the first overall draft pick of the Worcester Blades, and she has a master's degree in mental health as well, and is obviously a high performance coach. So
And a high performer.
yeah, and a high performer as well. So yeah, she's great, and she's really going to lean into with everybody. She's going to lean into the personal leadership side. She's going to lean into the mindset side, and she can help you also with some of the mental health stuff if you struggle with that. Although we'd recommend you go outside this program for that. And then like for me, like I just wrapped up the certification, so I am now a certified leadership coach, and but also like I've spent the last 10 years in heavy industry. I walked the walk. I've walked the shop floors with all of you. I know what you're coming from. I know what you're dealing with. I've been in it. I've been in the weeds with you too. So any of those questions, maintenance, reliability, how to navigate corporate culture, like all these different things, that is definitely my demo. So you can come in and ask me those. And yeah, like, I mean, the last thing I'll say with this is I had this conversation earlier this week about somebody who was asking me, and they said they just didn't know where they wanted to go next.
I think I said that. Did I say that when I started the course? I don't know why I'm here. Well, I don't know what I want to do. And you're going to be such an asset for them. So what did
And
you say?
And that's exactly what you'll get from this, right? And it's exactly what I got from it myself, right? So I walked into Susan's office and I was basically like, I want to start a business. I have this podcast, like, let's go. And we went on this whole journey. And what came out the other side was not a reliability business. It wasn't a consulting company in terms of maintenance and reliability. Like, it is this direction of leadership and mental health. And it's not completely changed me, but it's opened up just this avenue of fulfillment or this avenue of impact that I wouldn't have had. And I think
Yeah, and that's go
yeah.
ahead.
No,
Well, I was going to
that's
say, well, just from listening to your story, it's what you were trying to do within these organizations as your job, right? Like you were doing your job, but you would see like things that needed to change. Like, I want to help these people. And now you can just do that. You don't have to like get your approval from the company and set up groups, within just your company. You can do that with anybody. And I think so it just amplified what you already wanted to do. And, I thought I was just coming to support Rob on the Leadership Launchpad. And I'm like, this is why I'm here. I'm here to, become a better leader, which was what I was trying to do during that time. But I didn't really even just understand what that meant. And you really helped me kind of understand the process and the things to get out of my way. And that was really, really excellent too. And like I said, like it became clear, it becomes even more clear, every day where it's not like, okay, today I'm a leader and everything is perfect. I'm doing everything exactly right. It's like an everyday improvement, but there are skills and it's having that accountability and those people who understand what you're trying to accomplish to help you get there. And I think that's probably just because you're there, you're opening up and telling them what you're trying to accomplish. So I don't know. What else do you want to say, Rob?
no, I love the team aspect of it. And and that for me is huge, right? I think a lot of us, we feel isolated or we feel alone in our work. And whether that's because either we're working alone or just they don't have these environments where it's okay to speak up, I think it's easy to feel isolated and it's easy to feel like either you're not being heard, you're not being listened to, you're not able to drive change. And I think like having teammates who are there to support you, having people who are there to see you and hear you and help you, it's going to just skyrocket your growth. So that's what we
Just
got
like
for you.
this, just like this. Skyrocket. Okay, that was cheesy. But thank you, Rob, for what you've done for me, what you've done for our community. And I'm excited for the next group for sure. And I'm excited to see, all the things that our teammates have learned and what they're doing next. So, yeah. So here's to that. Cheers to that. And I'll put all of your information in the show notes where people can find you and a link to the course. And yeah, until next time.
That's right. And I guess we'll throw this in there. So we're giving a $500 early bird offer out from now until May 21st. And then the signups close on June 11th and we'll be starting sometime in the week of June 14th. So once we get people in the course and we know what time zones everyone's in, we'll make sure we have a time that everyone's available. And yeah, we'd love to have you. If you want to check out the information for it, you can go to robsreliability.com/leadership and really see what the course outline is and see kind of like some of the stats around engagement, disengagement, leadership, and these types of things. And yeah, I'd love to have you in the course.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, all the people are going to experience such awesome group for one. Lauren being on there, I think is going to be powerful. So Lauren, I've really enjoyed her perspective on the podcast. And so, I'm excited for everybody and I can't wait to hear. So if you join this, okay, well, you won't even have to tell me because Rob's going to show it and we'll all be there cheering you on as a leader. So, okay, well, that's the end of our show, Rob. Till next time, be empowering. That's
Thanks,
my line
Charli.
at the end of the show every time.